Hey coders, welcome to our first session of the Node.js crash course. Today we are starting with the most fundamental question. What exactly is Node.js? Node.js is a JavaScript runtime environment that allows you to run JavaScript code outside of a web browser. That is huge. Before Node.js came along in 2009, JavaScript was primarily confined to browsers. Now we can use the same language on servers, command line tools, desktop applications, and so much more. Let's look at some of the rare use cases for Node.js. Node.js excels at real-time applications, for example, chat or gaming, for building API servers, streaming applications, command line tools, microservices, and so much more. Now, let's look at which company or who uses Node.js. Major companies like Netflix, LinkedIn, Walmart, Uber, PayPal, and NASA use Node.js for critical parts of their infrastructure. Hey everyone, welcome to our Node.js crash course, where we are focusing exclusively on vanilla Node.js. No frameworks, no extra libraries, just pure Node.js power. What makes this course special? Unlike many tutorials that rush to frameworks like Express, we are taking a different approach. We are stripping it back to the essentials and learning how Node.js works at its core. This foundational knowledge will make you a stronger developer regardless of which frameworks you might use later. Why learn vanilla or pure Node.js? Understanding Node.js without frameworks gives you deeper insight into how Node.js actually works. The ability to solve problems without depending on third-party code. Better debugging skills when things go wrong. The knowledge to evaluate frameworks critically, and skills to build custom solutions when existing frameworks don't fit. And this is what we will cover in this course: the fundamentals of Node.js and how it works, creating and using modules to organize your code, working with file system to read and write files, building HTTP servers from scratch, handling event streams and buffers for efficient data processing. And above all, we will be building a couple of projects to reinforce our knowledge. You will be amazed at how much you can accomplish with just Node.js standard library. When you understand the core concept, frameworks become tools than requirement. By the end of this course, you will have the confidence to build applications without nothing but Node.js itself, giving you ultimate control over your code. Are you ready to see the true power of Node.js without any abstractions? Let's get started. Before we get into code, unless we install Node.js and our code editor. If you visit nodejs.org, this is the official website. The interface might change depending on the time of watching this video, but the concept is going to be the same. So first of all, it says that run JavaScript everywhere. And like I said, before Node.js, JavaScript only runs in the browser. But now, we can run JavaScript on servers. So before we get into code, we need to install or download Node.js. If you visit the download page, we have different options to download. It has detected my operating system, which is Mac, so we can choose either Mac or Windows depending on your operating system. If you select Windows, we can install using npm, or we can download using the pre-built. So in here, make sure to select your operating system. For Windows, choose this or that. For me, I'm going to use Mac, and then your architecture. I'm going to use 64, that is my operating system version, and then I'm going to click on the download installer. And Node.js is being downloading here. Alright, it is done. So let me open that. and then click to install, continue, agree, install. All right, it is done. So let me close this and then move to trash. Perfect. The next step is our code editor. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. It says that your code editor redefined with AI. And note that for this course, we are going to ignore using AI. We need to have the fundamentals first. And by the end of this course, when using AI to work with Node.js, you'll be amazed how productive you'll be and how easy to work with Node.js using AI. But for now, let's work in the hard way. So I'm going to download from my operating system, and I have it already, which is this one. So I'm going to have a folder called Node.js Crash Course, and I'm going to open it in my editor, which is this. And let's install a couple of packages. We may need Prettier for formatting our code, which is this, and then install. After installation, let's click on the settings and then settings here, and let's select format. And by default, it is using none, so make sure to select Prettier. Nice. And the next extension, I'm going to use better comment. And this is going to help us to color our comment and install. At the moment, let's use these two extensions. Now that we have Node.js being installed, let's confirm if indeed it has been installed. I'm going to open my terminal. If you come up here, then new terminal, and to confirm, use Node-v, meaning the version of Node.js, and I'm using version 20.12.1. Your version might be higher than mine, but the concept is going to be the same. Better still, you can still follow along. Now that we have installed Node.js and confirmed that it is working, let's continue in the next video to get started with Node.js. This video is the most exciting one because we are going to write our first Node.js code. Don't worry if you've never written a line of server-side code before. I'm going to walk you through step by step. First, we need to have a folder, and I'm going to call mine as Node.js first step. I can have the folder in here, or I can create it in my Explorer here. I am inside my Node.js Crash Course. I'm going to have a folder called Node.js first project, and it will be visible in my editor here. Let's install an extension to beautify our folders and files. We can install VS Code icons. So I'm going to search for icons, and let me try material theme icons. Let me search for that, and then trust publisher and then install. And let's have a look. I like this one. What about different colors? Let's try icon ocean. I'm going to open this folder at the root level and then open folder. So right now I am inside this folder called Node.js first project. We are going to have a file. Let me increase the zoom level. We are going to have a file, and we're going to use JavaScript extension. So in here, right click and then new file. I'm going to call my file as hello.js because Node.js is JavaScript. So we're going to use JavaScript extensions, or we're going to write JavaScript code as well when dealing with Node.js. Like I said that we are going to ignore AI for this project. So let me collapse the sidebar, and in here, I'm going to make use of console, or let me have a comment as my first Node.js code. And it goes like this, console.log. And I'm going to say that hello from Node we have written our first line of server-side code, and that is hello from Node.js. And that is it. Just one line. Let's break it down here. What is happening? We have what is called the console.log. This one works the same way it does in browser JavaScript. So before learning Node.js, unless you're familiar with JavaScript, and then we don't need to import any modules to use it, no HTML, no browser, and this one will run directly in your terminal. So now, how can we preview this? And to do that, we're going to use the terminal. So I'm going to open the terminal here, and we're going to use Node, and then the name of our file, which is called hello space, and then hello. You can include the extension as .js, or you can leave it as hello. And in case your file is inside a folder, then unless you navigate into that folder before you can execute the file. So with this one, I'm gonna hit enter, and we got the message as hello from Node.js. Congratulations, you've just run your first Node.js program. And let's include more context here. I'm gonna console log current time. So I'm gonna say const current time is equal to, we're gonna use new and then date. I'm gonna get the hours from this as hours is equal to current time dot get hours. Let me provide a name as const as username, and I'm gonna call this one as Emmanuel. I'm going to greet a user depending either it is in the morning or evening or afternoon. Now with this one, let's log the hours. So below here, log the hours, and let's run it in the terminal. Hello, we have 7 hours here at the moment, and this log has been logged. Perfect. So I'm gonna say that let greeting, by default it is undefined. So I'm gonna say that if hours is less than 12, then we know that it is in the morning. So I'm gonna say greeting is equal to good morning. Else if hours is less than 18, then we're gonna update the greeting, which is equal to good afternoon. Else greeting is equal to good evening. All right. I'm going to run this by saying console.log. Let me remove this log from here, and let's use one log. I'm going to use backtick and then $ curly braces, the greeting, and then comma, then the username. I want to have a beautiful message as username, and then exclamation mark, welcome to Node.js. So it's going to be like this. Good morning, Emmanuel, welcome to Node.js, or good afternoon, Emmanuel, welcome to Node.js. With this, let me open the terminal, and to clear the previous logs, make use of clear and then hit enter, and let's run the file as node hello and then hit enter, and I got good morning, Emmanuel, welcome to Node.js. I forgot to include the to here. And one thing is that anytime you make changes to the file, unless you rerun your Node.js application, and we got it as good morning, Emmanuel, welcome to Node.js, and indeed I'm in the morning right now. So guys, we have written our first line or multiple lines of Node.js code. In today's video, we are going to explore one of the most useful tools for learning and experimenting with Node.js, and that is the REPL, which stands for read, evaluate, print, and loop. Think of the REPL as a playground where you can read your input, evaluate your code, print the result, loop back for more input. And this one is perfect for testing quick ideas, learning JavaScript features, or debugging code snippets without having to create and run entire files. So let me explain one more time about the REPL. The R means read your input, and that is the code that you are going to type. And evaluate simply means that what you've entered, and print means the result, and loop simply means back, waiting for new input. So like I said, that the REPL is like a playground where you can test JavaScript code instantly without having to create files, save them, and run them separately. So how can we access or use the REPL? I'm going to have a folder in my directory here, or in my VS Code. I'm going to have a folder called REPL. And I'm going to open this one as a standalone, like that. Open folder, perfect. Here we go. So to access the REPL, we're going to use the terminal. So to do that, open the terminal like that, and let me increase the zoom level. In here, to access the REPL, we are going to type Node and hit enter. And it says that welcome to Node.js. That is a version of my Node.js, and we can use .help to get more info about the REPL. When you see this symbol, it simply means that indicating that Node.js is waiting for your input. You are now in the REPL environment. So let's try some basic JavaScript expressions. So in here, I'm going to use 2 plus 2. And then when I hit enter, I got 4. We can also execute a string. I'm going to say hello, either single quote or double quote. I'm going to use single quote here. I'm going to say hello, and it has been executed. We can also have a variable let counter equal to 1, and then I'm going to increase counter with 1, and when I call counter, I got 2. I can also declare a variable as a, which is equal to 2, and then let b equal to 10, and I'm going to add the 2 as let result equal to a plus b, and when I log or execute the result, I got 12. As you can see, this is more like a playground to test JavaScript or Node.js features, and we can also write a function here to be executed. The sky is your limit. So as you can see, the REPL simply means that a playground to debug, test, and write JavaScript. Welcome back. We are going to dive into one of the most fundamental concepts in Node.js, and that is modules and then the require system. Modules are blocks of reusable code that solve specific problems. Think of them as a building blocks that you can combine to create larger applications. Modules help us, one, to organize code into separate files, avoid polluting the global scope, reuse code across different parts of our application, and share code with other developers. In Node.js, we have two main module systems. One is the CommonJS and then the ES6 modules. For CommonJS, this is the original module system using require and module.export. And lastly, the ES6 module, which is new and modern. And that is a newer ECMAScript standard using import and export. We are going to explore these two module systems. But let's begin with the CommonJS. In case this is confusing, when you get into code, you better understand it. So let's get back to Visual Studio Code to get started. I'm going to have a folder at the root of my project, or let me have it here in my VS Code as new modules. And then we're going to have two subfolders. One is CommonJS Alright, so let me open the CommonJS as a standalone. Now let's begin with the module system. I'm gonna have a file called app.js. And note that module system help us to reuse code. Now let's have a simple code here. And on this file, let me avoid the AI stuffs. So on this file, we are going to console.log as .js file called or executed. And I'm going to use Node to run this file as Node and then app.js, and I got app.js file called, which is this one. Now let's implement the module system using the CommonJS syntax. So I'm going to have one file called math.js. The main goal here is that we have two main files, the app.js and then the math.js. And the main goal here is that we are going to write some logics on this file called math.js, and we are going to use it in the app.js. This is where module concept comes in. So on the math.js file, I'm going to write a couple of functions. The first function is going to add two numbers. So here as function to add two numbers. And I forgot to install one important extension called code spell checker. This is going to avoid us when it comes to typing mistakes. Alright, so let me close that. Perfect. So function to add two numbers. I'm going to use normal function keyword as add, and then this function is going to take in two numbers, A and B. And we are going to return A plus B. The main goal here is that we want to run this file on the app.js. So how can we run it? Note that at the moment, these two files are independent. They don't know each other. This is where the module syntax or logics comes in. So now I'm on the app.js. So to be able to use this function in the math.js, unless we require it. And we have the required as that, which is this, and as a function call. So in here, we are going to pass in the path of the file that we want to require. So if I use quote, double quote, or single quote, and then /, I have located the math.js file. So I'm going to assign to a variable as math, which is equal to that. This means that require is a function, and what comes back from this require, we have access to the codes on this file. So this is what we call the import. So here I'm going to say import the entire math module. Now the math file is a module that has a code that we want to reuse. So in here, how can we access this? But before we can access this, unless we make this code accessible, this is where module.export comes in. This means that we want this code or logic to be accessible unless we explicitly do that. So we're going to use module dot and then export. What are we exporting? We are exporting the function called add, which is this. So now we can access this function on this file. So how are we going to use it? Note that what comes back from this is a function, which is the add. So we can make it more meaningful by saying add function from this, which means that we are pulling the function that we are making it global as add as a function call here. This means we are accessing what comes back from this file. In this case, we are exposing the add function. Therefore, I'm going to make it more meaningful by saying add. So now I'm going to log the add and then pass in two numbers as 1 and 2. So if I check my terminal and run the file, I got 3. So the keynote here is that we have a function here and we want to make it global so that we can access it on the main file, in this case app.js. So this is what we call the module system using the require statement. But we can improve upon this. Note that this file can have multiple functions. Apart from the add, we are going to have a function to subtract. I'm going to say that I have copied that, and then I'm going to say subtract, and then here as subtract. The difference here is minus. And now we have 2 functions that we want to make it global or accessible. Therefore, this format for exporting will not work. We need to export them as an object with key value pair. So in here, I'm going to export the add. There is a key and the value is going to be the actual name. I can say add function, which is equal to that, and then comma subtract function, which is equal to subtract. The key here can be anything, but mostly we use the name of the function as a key and a value. So here we can say subtract, and then we can say add. And according to year 6, if the key and value are the same, we can choose to maintain one as that. So this is the same as before. Now we are exposing 2 functions here. So the way we are accessing it here will not work because we are exposing multiple functions. Therefore, I'm going to assign this one as math. This one can be anything. So on the math here, we have access to the add and then subtract. So if I say math dot, as you can see here, we have these 2 functions on the math module. For the add, I'm going to say 10 and then comma 20 here. And I'm going to say const something like add result, which is equal to that. Let me also access the subtraction as subtract result equal to math dot subtract. Perfect. So I'm going to log the add result, and as before I got 30 here. What about if I log the subtraction also as subtract result? Let me clear it, and I got minus 10. And we have a better way when we are importing it. When using the multiple export here, instead of using math or the function name, we can destructure from here. So let me comment out everything here, and I'm going to destructure by saying that const object and then equal to require. Then we're going to require the math object. So what comes back from this, we have access to the add and then subtract without using the dot notation. So in here, I'm going to log the add. I'm going to add 2 numbers as 40 and then 20. And then for the subtraction as that, let me say 100 and then 20. So I'm going to run the file and I got the result. This is what we call the module system using the CommonJS syntax. In the next video, we will talk about the ES6 module. Now that we have covered the CommonJS format, let's focus on the modern one, and that is the ES6 module. And before we continue, I don't like the way Visual Studio Code is formatting my folders and files. So I'm going to make some changes to my settings here and search for folder, and then below here uncheck the compact. And if I do that, as you can see, this is how I want the folders to be arranged. So let's focus on the ES6 module. I'm going to have a folder as ES6 module, And then we are going to rewrite the CommonJS to use the ESS format. So to do that, I'm going to have two files. The first one is going to be the app.js, and when using the ESS module without npm, the extension must end with mjs. And the next file is going to be the math.mjs. So in the math here, the way we did for the CommonJS, we are going to have these two functions. I'm going to copy the function that we did before, and then back here, paste that. The key note here is how we are going to export these functions. And we have a couple of ways. We can export a single function as we did for the CommonJS. To do that, we're going to use export default, and then the file or the function that I want to export, for example, the add. So now in the app.mjs, we are going to use this function called add. So back here, I'm going to say that import, and it goes like this, import, and then the variable name as add from, and then .math.js. And we have the auto import. If I use add and then hit enter, it is going to automatically import for me, and I got it as before. So now if I execute, let me close this. If I execute the function called add, this one can be anything, but it represents what has been exported from this file. So in here, I'm going to log it and add. I'm going to pass in, let's say 10 and then 20 here. In the console, I'm going to log it. Well, I didn't open this one as a standalone, so let me show you the other way of running your application. At the moment, we are inside the modules folder, so I'm going to change by using cd and then the name of the folder as modules. Now in the modules folder, we have all of these folders. So if I use list as ls, it's going to show me all the folders and files within this folder. We have the ESS module and then the CommonJS. What I want to execute is the ESS module. So I'm going to say that cd ESX module, and then I'm going to run this file called app.mjs. So let me clear it and use node and then space app.mjs, and I got 30. So to avoid using cd in, the shortcut syntax is going to be like this. The folder that you want to run, right click and then open in the terminal, and VS Code will open that folder alone, which is this one. So now I can use node and then app. It's supposed to be, the extension should be added as node and then app.mjs and then hit enter, and we got 30. So as you can see, this one is similar when using the module.export, but for this is a modern way. But let's say that you want to export multiple functions. Now we're going to change this format. So I'm going to comment out this, and then I'm going to say export multiple, and it goes like this: export default and then object with key value pair, add, that's my first function, and then the subtract. Perfect. And we can also export a string, for example version, and I'm gonna say version 1.0.0. I can also export something like name, and I'm gonna say that the math module. Alright, so now we are going to access these ones in our application. Now that we are exporting them as an object, this format will not work. So I'm going to comment out this, and this is how it's going to be. It's going to be as import. I'm going to say math from the math module. So now on the math, we have all the functions: add, name, subtract, and then the version. So if I use the add and then as a function call, I'm going to add 10 and then 80, and I'm going to log as console.log, and then as that, if I run the application here, let me place the terminal here like that. Good. And let me close the chat here. All right, let me clear it. So if I run, so it's supposed to be node and then app.mjs, I got 90. And let's say I want to use the subtract. I'm going to copy and paste and use the subtract and then run again. I got 90 and then minus 70. And if I want to use the name, is not a function, therefore I'm going to use the property, and I got the math module. What about the version? Name.version, and then let me run again, and here we go. Hello everyone, in this video we are diving into two super important modules that you will use all the time in Node.js development, and that is the file system and the path modules. Let's begin with the path module. I regard path module as cross-platform development. By the end of the explanation, you better understand what is a cross-platform development. So let's begin with the path module. And it says that this is handy built-in module that helps us to work with file and directory paths in a way that works across different operating systems. This means that when we are building backend applications, our application will run on different operating systems. And this is where the path module comes in. Let me explain the cross-platform development here. When building applications that need to run on Windows, macOS, and Linux, the path module becomes essential. Windows uses what is called the backslashes, which is this, while Unix-based systems use forward slashes. So the path module automatically handles these differences, allowing you to write code once that works everywhere. So without the path module, unless we build the application for different operating systems, and apart from the cross-platform development, the path module is being used for serving static files. And that is when building a web server, you often need to serve static files like images, CSS, and JavaScript. And the path module here helps you to construct the correct file paths regardless of where your server is hosted, ensuring your application works in development and production environment. When I say production environment, this is where your app is being hosted, where any user on the internet can have access to. Unlike development environment, the application is being hosted on your PC or your computer only. Only you can access it. So with the path module, application will run in this environment. Apart from serving static files, we also use a path module to configure file management. For example, applications often need to locate configuration files in the standard locations, and the path module helps you to resolve relative paths to absolute paths, making it easy to access these files whether you are running the app from the project or a subdirectory. And lastly, project organization. For example, in a large project, you might organize code into modules, utilities, and resources folder. The path module helps navigate between these directories reliably, ensuring import and file operations work consistently. So with this one being said, let's get into a Visual Studio Code to put them into practice. We are beginning with the path module. So back here, I'm going to have a folder called path module, and I'm going to have one file called app.js. First of all, we need to require the path module, which is a built-in from Node.js. As soon as you install Node.js, we have the built-in modules, and it goes like this: const path. We're going to use the CommonJS syntax as require, and then path. when importing built-in module, we don't use dot or forward slash, just the name. Now, when we log the path, which is this, and let's check it out in the terminal, open in the terminal, and let me close this one, and I'm gonna run node and then app.js. And let's have a look at the methods and properties from the path module. We have the resolve method, is absolute, normalized, join, relative, dir name, base name, extension name, and other properties. We are going to explore some of these properties. So back here, we are going to get the file name from a path. So I'm going to have a comment as get or getting file name from a path. And it goes like this: path dot base name. When I make use of path and dot, I have all of these methods and properties. So for the base name, it is used to get the file name from a path. Now, what is a file and what is a path? Let's look at the folder structure here. At the moment, these are the folders and files. When I say the path to this app.js, it is inside the path module and then the file. So when I say the base name, I'm going to reference the path. For this, I'm going to use some dummy path here. So assuming that this is my path, / users, and then in the users folder, I have the files, and the files I want to access what is called the test.txt. So assuming that I have this folder with these files, and what I want here is the file name. And what's the file name here? The file name here is the one with the extension, and that is the txt. So if I log, I'm going to cut everything from here and just log it. And let me check the terminal. Let me clear it and run the application. And as you can see, this is the file name. If you use this folder as an example, if you want to know the file name in the path folder, the file name here is app.js. If you look inside your first project, the file name here is hello. So with the path module, with a method called base name, we can get the actual file in that folder. And apart from the file name, we can also get the directory name. Understanding these terms will help you to become a better Node.js developer. So now understand what is the directory name. If you look at these folders, these are our directory names. We have a directory for modules, Node.js first project, path module, and then the REPL. And at the root, this is our directory name, which is the Node.js crash course, and we have sub directory names. So assuming that this is my directory, I'm going to copy this and then just change the name to dir name, and that is the directory name for short. So let me comment out this. For this one, what will be the directory name? It is going to be the folders. That's what it means. So in which folders that we can find this file? So if I check it out in the terminal, it can be found in the users / files. So we got two methods, dir name and then the base name. Let me change this comment color to use this. It's because of the better comment extension I installed. Apart from the directory name, we can also get the file extension. So I'm going to copy this and then getting the file extension. And let me uncomment. So for this one, what will be the file extension? It's going to be .txt. If I change this one to JS, the extension is what? .js. Let's change the method to extension name, and that is ext name, which means extension name, and it is .js. If I change this one to HTML, the extension is going to be HTML, which is this one. And apart from this, let me copy and comment. Apart from this, we can also join paths. that's going to work across operating systems. I'm going to say that, and let me remove this one from here, and it goes like this. We are going to join couple of paths, and it goes like this: path.join. And then as a function call, we are going to pass in the /users, and I want to join this folder plus its file. So here, comma, and then the name of the folder that I want to join, called files, and what file that I want to place it in the folder after it has been joined. I'm going to pass in, for example, test dot, let's say, txt. So if I log or run it in the terminal, I have it being joined together. So the join joins different paths together. We can also get what is called the absolute path, and it goes like this: path.resolve. And then we're going to pass in the file name as text.txt. So with this one, what would be the absolute path? Let's try out. Let me clear the terminal and then run again. And let's have a look at the absolute path. And it starts from here: users, Async, desktop, Node.js folder, path module, and then the actual file. So this path where we have users, Async, desktop, Node.js, and then path module is my current working directory. And we have a method called dirname. When I say the current working directory, now I'm going to open a folder that is my Explorer, which is this one. As soon as I open my Explorer, this is my user. From the user, I have to move into Async, which is this one. And then in the Async, I have to move to desktop. And I can find my desktop here, which is this. And then on the desktop, I have the Node Crash Course folder, which is this one. And then inside that, I have path module. Open that, correct, which is the path module. So this is how we can get the absolute path. But before we end this video, let's talk about access special path properties. And I'm going to say that properties here, and we have what is called the file name. So I'm going to log, we use __ file name, and we use this one for full path to current file. So with this, let me comment out these guys, and let's log the file name, and this is a file name. Apart from that, we also have the dir name. The dir name is used to get the current directory as we have already explored. And these are what we call the built-in global object. So I'm going to use __ dir name. So with this one, it's going to give us the current working directory. So let me clear everything here. And this is my current working directory, which means the folder that I am currently working in, it will give me the full path from operating system to the folder where I am working in. And as you saw, my current working directory is in the users, Async, desktop, node folder, and then the path module, because this is what I am currently working in as the path module. In the previous video, we covered the path module. In this video, let's focus on the file system. So what is the file system module? The main purpose of the FS module or the file system is to allow us to work with the file system on our computer. And it has both the synchronous and asynchronous method. With the FS module, we can perform the following operations. We can use Node.js to create a file, append data, rename it, read it, and also delete the folder or a file using the FS module. And this is so powerful. For the file system, we can perform the following: application login, configuration management, data import and export, user content management, file-based databases, and report generation. For the application logging, many applications need to log activities, errors, and user actions. The FS module allows us to create and manage log files, implement log rotation when files get too large, and archive old logs, all essential for production applications. And for the configuration management, applications often store configurations in JSON or YAML files, and the FS module here lets you read these files on a startup, watch for changes, and update application behavior accordingly without requiring any restart. Now, let's get back to Visual Studio Code to perform the following: how we can use Node.js FS module to create a file or a folder, append some data to it, rename it, read it, and then delete it. So back to Visual Studio Code here. In the path module, I'm going to have a folder called FS module, and I'm going to have one file called fs.js. The name is up to you. So first of all, we need to require the FS module. And FS module goes with the path module, of which we have already covered. So I'm going to require the FS module, which is equal to require, and then the FS module. Once again, if I log the FS module here, now let me clear it and navigate into this particular folder. Right click and then open in the terminal. Correct, and then use node and then fs.js, and let's have a look at the methods and properties similar to the path module. We have what is called append file sync, and like I said, for the FS module we have synchronous and asynchronous operations. We can copy file, we can check if we have an existing folder, and add it. So let's explore few of these methods, and at your free time you can explore the rest. So like I said, that it goes with the path module, so let's also require the path because we need to locate the path that you want to perform the file operations as well. So back here, first of all, this is what we are going to do. We are going to create a folder, and after creating, we are going to create a file. After creating the file, we are going to write some content onto the file. After writing it, we want to append some content into it, and also we want to read all what we have written onto the file, and lastly, delete that file. So how are we going to do it? The first step is that we need to define a folder and a file path, meaning the folder that we want to create those files. So in here, I'm going to say that define a folder and file path. And it goes like this: const folder path. I want to locate the folder that I want to perform the operations, which is equal to path.join. What are we joining? We are joining both our current working directory, because we want this application to be accessible irrespective of the operating system. So path.join makes sure that it works across different operating systems, and we have what is called the dir name. The dir name is the current working directory, as we have already explored. So in this project, my current working directory is inside the FS module, and this is the last folder that I am currently working in. So once again, if I log the __ dir name, it is going to give me the path to my operating system and to where I am currently working in. So let me run again, and as you can see, it can be found users, Async, desktop, and Node.js crash course, and the FS module folder. If I explore in my file explorer here, this is a user, and then in the user I have Async, desktop, and then Node.js crash course folder. That is my current working directory, and I want to have a folder where I am currently working in. So now that we have the path, I want to have this folder. I'm going to call this folder as, let me say something like students folder or product. Let me include folder at the end to make it more descriptive. For this one, is going to combine this folder to my current working directory. In this case, I am working in the Node.js crash course. So I'm going to log the folder path. Let me try again. And I have it as what? fs module /students folder. At the moment, this folder doesn't exist, and we are going to create this folder. The next step is that we need to locate the file that we want to create in case it exists or it doesn't exist. So back here, it is going to be as const file path is equal to path module dot join. And then what are we joining? We are joining the student folder, or the folder path here, sorry, and the file that we want to have it in this folder. I'm going to call this one as student_list.txt or .pdf. So I'm going to log file path also, and indeed I have this file path. So I have constructed both the folder I want to create and the file I want to have it in that folder. At the moment, it doesn't exist yet. So we are going to create a directory if it doesn't exist. And it goes like this. If on the fs module, we have a method called existSync. This one is used to check if a certain path exists. So in here, we're going to pass in the path. And this function checks if a certain folder exists. So in here, we're going to pass in the folder name as folder path. So we're going to change this one to false, which means in case we don't have this folder, then we are going to create the folder. And it goes like this. On the fs, we have a method called makeDirectorySync. And then we're going to create that folder called folder path. So with this one, I'm going to log something like a folder created. So with this one, let's try out and let's have a look at the folder structure. At the moment, we don't have that folder yet, but as soon as I run the application, let's have a look. And it says that folder created. And if I check it inside the fs module, I have the folder being created without any file. It is time for us to create a file and write some content onto the file. So how are we going to do it? We are done creating the folder. The next step is that, let me say this is step number 1. And then step number 2 here is create and write to a file. And it goes like this. fs dot, we have a method called writeSync. We are using the synchronous way. In the next video, we are going to convert to use the asynchronous format by using callbacks. So in here, we're going to pass in the file that we want to create. In this case, the file path. That's going to be the studentslist.pdf. So here, I'm going to pass in the file path as that. The next step is that the content that we want to write onto that file. I'm going to say list of students. So let me run the application and put your eye here. It's going to create that file and write the content into it. As you can see here that the PDF file has been created and we have this content onto that file. So assuming that you want to append more content onto it, how are we going to do it? This is where, let me log something like file created and written. All right, so step number 3 is append more content, and it goes like this: fs dot append file sync, and the file is called the file path. And what I want to append, I'm gonna say that this is an appended line, and I want this one to be on a new line. I'm gonna use the backslash and then in, and let me also include \n so that it will be on a new line. Let me run the application, and then let's see. And as you can see here, that it has been appended. Apart from that, we also want to read everything on the file. So I'm going to comment out these guys. We already have some content on the file that I want to read. So I'm going to say that step number 4 is read the file content. I'm going to assign to a variable as content, which is equal to fs.readFileSync, and which file that I want to read the content, which is the file path, and then pass in the Unicode. I'm going to use UTF-8, and then I'm going to log the content that is on the file. All right, so let's try out. Let me clear and then run, and this is the content on the file. I'm going to add more content manually. As that, we can use the append file, and let's try out. And as you can see, we have the content here. At the moment, we can perform the following: creating a folder, a file, writing, reading. What about deleting? This is what we call the onLink. That is last point as delete a file. And it goes like this: fs.onLinkSync. And which file that I want to delete is a file path. So with this one, put your eye here. When I save it and run the application, it is going to delete the file. And as you can see that it has been deleted. Great. So let me uncomment, and then let me write the file again by appending these contents. Great. And it has been created. So what we have done is the synchronous way, and this one blocks other operations until the next one finishes. The next video, we're going to use the asynchronous way by using callbacks. This is where we left in the previous video by working with the FS module. And as we saw, this one uses both the synchronous and asynchronous operation. What we have done is synchronous operation, which means that the operation blocks other codes from running until the first one finishes. And this is not ideal in production application or large application. Because of that, we are going to convert this one to use asynchronous. And we have two main options: either to use callbacks or promises with async await. Copy and paste this file and then rename as fs-async. Let's work on this file. And to use the promises or async await for the import on the FS module, we're going to use .promises. So now we are going to restructure the way we are creating the folder. So in here, I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to use a function as async, and then function, then the name of the function as create folder, and then bring in try and catch block, and remove the error here. In the try, we are going to await, and then the fs module dot access. We are going to check if this folder exists. So in here as the folder path. If it doesn't exist, then we are going to await it here, and then fs dot make dir without the sync, and then pass in the folder that we want to create. And then below here, I'm going to say that log folder created. So to run, we're going to call this function as create folder. All right, so let me rename the folder that I want to create. I'm going to call this one as product. All right, and then product.pdf. So let me comment out, or even let me remove everything from here. All right, so I'm going to run this file. I am inside the fs module, so it's going to be as node, the name of the file as fs, and folder created, which is this one. So we have created this folder asynchronously. The next step is to create a file. It's supposed to be this one. Now I can comment out this because we have the folder being created. So in here is going to be as async, and then function, the name of the function as write file. You can name it whatever you want, and then try and catch block. In the try, we are going to await the fs module dot write file. Not write file sync, but instead write file, which is asynchronous, and the file path that I want to create, and then the content on that file. I'm gonna say that great, and then in case something goes wrong, we are going to log the error, and then let me log by saying that file, and let me call the function as write file. All right, so let me run the application, and in the product folder I have the file with the content on it. And let me comment out this. The next one is going to be the append. So I'm going to copy this and then change this one to append to file. And it goes like this. The file path is supposed to be the append file, and then the content I want to append. Let me say sold, and let me also format this. All right, so let me uncomment. I want to write it and then append the file as append file. I want to rewrite the file again. That is why I am uncommenting this. So let me clear it and then run. Let's check it out. And it has been appended. What about the reading? It follows the same format. I'm going to copy this and then paste, change this one to read file, the path, and then the encoded format. I'm going to use comma here and then UTF-8, and let me assign to a variable as content, which is equal to that, and let me log the content. Perfect. Let me call the file here as read file, and let me check, and I think I have so many logs. Let me uncomment the append one, the writing, you have it already. All right, so I want to read. It's supposed to be read file. Sorry guys, yeah. So in here, let me clear, and we have it as that thing. Oh, sorry, I think I mistakenly wrote this one. Let me check. Okay, so let me try again. and I have the content being read. And lastly, the deleting, copy the function comment and then delete file. So in here it is on link, and the path that I want to remove is this. Remove this one, and I'm gonna say that file deleted. So let me call the function here as delete file, and let's have a look. After running, it's going to delete that file. Indeed, it has been deleted. So let me create it again. So let me write file on comment, and then the creation of the folder on comment, append file on comment, read file on comment, and lastly, let me comment the function call for the deleting. So let's have a look, and indeed it has been created again. In this video, we are going to talk about one of the most powerful global objects that gives you access to the current Node.js process, and that is the process object. The process object is a global object that provides information about and control over the current Node.js process. And this is always available without using the require statement. Let's see some key aspects of the process object. One is the environment information, command line interface, process control, error handling, standard I/O streams, graceful shutdowns. Let's begin with the environment information. The process object, it provides crucial information about the environment where your Node.js application is running on. And this one includes details about the operating system, Node.js version, and environment variables. In case you are new to environment variables, these are variables that are sensitive that your application depends on to run. For example, if you are building a full stack application or API, definitely we may need what is called MongoDB connection string in case you are using MongoDB, or in case you have some API keys, we are going to place all of these ones in the environment variable. So with the process object, we can interact with the Node.js environment. As you move on, you better understand the environment variables. So in short, the environment variables are important as they allow you to configure your application differently across development, testing, and production environment. When developing, you may need a different MongoDB connection string, but in production, you may need different MongoDB connection string. So with the environment, we can configure our application to work in different environments by using different environment variables. Apart from the environment information, we can also use the process for command line interface. What do I mean? When running Node.js application from the command line, as we have been seeing, the process object gives you access to any argument passed to your program. And I will demonstrate what I mean about passing other arguments to your program when running in the terminal. And this one makes it possible to create powerful command line tools and utilities that respond to different commands and options. Once again, we have a video to talk about command line interface. Apart from this, we also have the process control. And this one lets you control the life cycle of your application. You can gracefully exit the application when needed, detect when the process is about to terminate, and even respond to signals from the operating system, like when a user presses Ctrl+C, and also error handling. One of the most critical features is the ability to catch uncaught exceptions. Without this capability, any unhandled error would crash your application. So the process object allows you to implement last resort error handlers that can log errors, perform cleanup operations, and decide whether to keep the application running or shut it down gracefully. And standard I/O streams. This one provides access to standard input, output, and error streams. These streams allow your application to communicate with the terminal or other processes, enabling powerful pipeline capabilities similar to Unix systems and graceful shutdown, as I have explained. Now that we have the clear picture about the process object, let's get into Visual Studio Code to put them into practice. So I'm going to have a folder called the process object. And then I'm going to have a file called demo.js. So in here, how can we access the process object? The process object is a global object, which means we don't need to require it. We can access it immediately. So if I make use of process, I have access to the process object. And on that, we have a couple of properties and methods. For example, the environment, that is env. And for this environment, we can configure our application by placing different variables on this environment. So at the moment, let's check the environment that we are currently on. To do that, I'm going to have a comment by saying that getting information about the environment. And I'm going to log it immediately. I'm going to say log and then process. If I make use of process, let's check it out in the terminal. I'm going to run this particular file. So let me close the previous one as node and then demo. And this is the process object. We have a lot of properties and methods. So what we want here is the environment variable. So if I use .env, now let's check it out in the terminal, run the application, and we can add our custom environments in here to make it more secure. And how can I do that unless I access the environment variable? So in here, we're going to use what is called the env.node_env. That is node environment. So in here, if I try out again, here we got undefined because we haven't set any node environment here. So how can we set it? And we're going to use the command line interface to set our environment variables here. On Mac, we're going to use node and then underscore the environment. That is our environment variable name, which is equal to production. And then I'm going to run the file as node and then demo. With this one, let's see. As you can see here that now I am in production environment. This is how we set environment variable using the command line. If you are on Windows, bring set as set, then the environment variable and then the value, and you'll be good to go. This one is for Windows command prompt. And in case you are using, the PowerShell, then it's going to be $, then env, and then colon, then the environment variable, then you'll be good to go. As you move on, instead of setting the environment in the command line, we are going to have a file where we're going to have all our environment variables on. So here as access environment variable. Apart from that, we can also get the Node.js version that we are using. So I'm going to log and I'm going to say process.version. This one will give the version of our Node.js, and let me run it. And I am using version 20.12.1 by the time of watching this video. Apart from the Node.js version, we can also get the operating system platforms, and that is either Windows, Darwin, or Linux. And it goes like this: process.platform, and this one operating system, and let's try out. and I am on Darwin. We can also get the CPU, and it's equal to arc. Let's try and see, and this is my CPU architecture as ARM64, and we can also access the command line argument, and I will show you in the next video in details. So let me copy this, and I'm gonna say command line argument. I'm going to log it as process.argument. This is going to be an array containing command line arguments. The first element is going to be the process execution path, and that is a path to Node.js executable. And apart from that, for the second, is going to be the path to the JavaScript file being executed, and the remaining elements are going to be any additional command line arguments. So let me show you here. Let me comment out these guys to avoid so many console logs. So I'm going to log this, and we have array. As I spoke about, the first one contains the path to the Node.js executable file, which is this, and the second one is going to be the JavaScript file being executed. In this case, this is a file that has been executed. Once again, we have a video to talk more about the command line argument. Apart from that, we can also use the process to work with directory. So as I want to get the current working directory as we did when using the path module, we can also use the process to get the current working directory as cwd, which is this. And if I log it here, this is my, let me comment out this, and let me try again. Sorry, it's supposed to be a function as that, and I got my current working directory similar to their name. So let me add a comment as that. You also have the process control. For the process control, we can exit the process, and that is 0, which is equal to success, and non-zero is equal to failure. So in here, I'm going to say process.exit. And if I pass in 0, it simply means success, and none, which means failure. So we can use this one to exit the application. So even if I log this one below here, let's have a look. As you can see here that we have unreachable code, because at this point we are exiting the application, and we are saying that after exiting, go ahead and log. So you can regard the process.exit as return statement in JavaScript, which means that don't move on to the next code. So process.exit simply means that we are exiting the application. So 0 means success, and non-zero, which means failure. All right, so let me bring it back, and we can also process an event. So here as process event, and we normally use this one when dealing with asynchronous operation like connecting to database like MongoDB. So in here, we're going to listen to an event as process.on. And what are we listening? In case a user exit the application, we are going to have access what is called the code, and then I'm going to use arrow function for this. And in here, I'm going to log what is called process exiting with the code, and I'm going to inject the code as code, and let's try out. And we are exiting with 0 code, which means that success. Let's talk more about the command line interface. I'm going to have a folder as command line interface or argument. Let me use argument. I'm going to have a file called demo.js. So what is a command line argument, and how can we access it? The command line argument help us to pass information to our application upon running it. Here is the flow. Let's say we have a couple of logics on this file. Now, upon executing this file, which is equal to, let me right click and then open in the terminal. So in here, I'm going to run this file. Let me just log something like command line. All right. So if I run the application as node and then demo, this code has been called or run. Now, upon running the application, I want to pass additional information to my application. Let's say that I want to greet a user. So in here, I'm going to have a function as function greet user, and this function will take in the name of the user, and I'm just going to log by saying that good day, and then I'm gonna inject the user as name. Now, upon calling, I'm going to pass the name as get or greet user. I'm gonna say Async. Great. Now, if I run the application and we have good day Async, if I say Emmanuel, I'm gonna see good day Emma. Now, I don't want to hard code this value, but instead, upon running the application, I want to pass the name of the user into that function to be used. This is where the command line argument comes in. And here is the flow. We're going to call node and then the file that we want to run, in this case demo, and space. We can pass additional argument. So in here, I'm going to say that argument 1 space argument 2 space, let me say value 1 space dash dash option 1 as that. So with this one, we can access the additional argument in our application. So if I run it, nothing is happening because we are not accessing these values in the terminal. This is where the process.argument comes in. So I'm going to log, let me stop calling this function. I'm going to log the process.argument, which is this one. So let's try out and see. If I run the application again, as you can see, we have access to the argument that has been passed upon executing the file. And we have it as an array. The first index point to the Node.js executable code or file, which is this one. And the second one is our file that we are running. In this case, the command line argument, in that we have a file called demo.js. And the rest of the values are the extra argument that we pass upon executing the code. We have argument 1, 2, value, and option, and these are what we passed upon executing. Therefore, we can access them here. If I use the first index, if I run it, I'll be able to access the Node.js executable path, which is this one. And then if I want the second index, which is this, I have it as the main file that is running. Then the third one is going to be our first argument, and that is argument 1, which is this. If I want to access the 3 or the fourth index, I have the argument 2. So I'm going to access the name as argument 3, which is this one. So in here, upon executing, let me clear everything here and let me start from scratch. So demo, and then what I want to pass, just the name. I'm gonna use Emmanuel here in uppercasing. So with this one, if I run the application, I have undefined, supposed to be the third index, which is this one. So in here, I can get Emmanuel. So I'm going to pass this value to the function. So up here, I'm going to say const get user, which is equal to process.argument. And then I want the third index. So in here, I'm going to pass, let me uncomment this and then pass the name to this function. And now let's try out. clear it, and I have an error that says that process.argument is not a function. Oh, sorry, it's supposed to be an array instead. Sorry, guys. Yeah, this one. So let me clear. And I got good day Emmanuel. So this is how we can use the command line interface to pass additional values to our application. Hey everyone, in this video we are going to dive into creating HTTP servers with Node.js. This is where things get really exciting as we start building actual web applications. And since this concept is very important, I'm going to explain it in two ways. One is basic way by using some scenarios, and then we focus more on the technical aspect of it. We are going to use this diagram to explain what is a server. Imagine a restaurant. Customers come in, look at a menu, and then order food. Waiters take these orders to the kitchen and then bring back the food that was prepared. A web server works almost the same way. Let's take it that this is a customer that wants to order food from this restaurant. So first of all, the customer will place an order, and that is the request, which means that the customer is requesting some food. Then the waiters will come for the menu and then send to the kitchen for the food to be prepared. So now we are going to regard the restaurant as a server, because this is where the main logics are going to be implemented, and that is how the food is going to be prepared. So as soon as the food is ready, then the waiters will bring back the food to the customer, and this is what we call the response. So always a server receive a request and then process that request and then send back the response back to the user. That is basically how servers works. But we have other components that makes it happen. But this is a basic scenario. Let's have this scenario also. Let's say that we want to watch movies from YouTube or videos from YouTube. In this case, we have two main components, and that is you, the user or the client, and then YouTube server. First step is that we are going to type the URL of YouTube. And then as soon as we hit enter, you are making a request, and that is get request to a YouTube server. And then YouTube server is going to process your request and send back the response, and that is the videos that you are looking for. But in case a certain video that you are looking for doesn't exist, then the server will say that the video that you are looking for doesn't exist. So always a server receive a request and then process that and then send back the response back to the user. So after typing the URL, I'm going to search for a video, for example, gaming. And this is my request. As soon as I send, you saw the loading, which means that the server is processing my request. And what I got here are the videos that I was looking for. And this is what we call the response. And we are going to create our own servers where a user will make a request, and then our server will take that request, process it, and then send back the response back to the user. We are going to dive deep into servers in Node.js. So what is an HTTP server? As we have explained in the previous video, is a software application that understands and responds to HTTP requests. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and this is the foundation of data communication on the web. When you open a website, your browser sends an HTTP request to a server, which responds with the content you see, as we demonstrated in the previous video by using YouTube website. Now, in Node.js, an HTTP server is essentially an event-driven program that opens a port on your computer, listens for incoming HTTP requests, processes these requests, and then sends back the appropriate HTTP responses. Let's have a look at the client-server architecture when it comes to servers. HTTP communication follows client-server model, and we have here as the client. Always the client initiates a request, either by using browsers, mobile apps, or API consumers. So all of these are the clients or the users, and we have the server. The server waits for requests and responds to them, and we call something request-response cycle, which means each interaction follows this pattern like client ask, server answers. This is what we call request-response cycle. So we have a client and we have a server. A client initiates a request, then the server processes that and sends back the response. And we have many components that makes this happen. So let's begin with the HTTP request anatomy. When you make a request, it contains the following: the method, URL, headers, and then the body. Let's begin with the method. The method defines how to access or modify a data on the server. And these are the HTTP methods: get, post, put, delete. And we have patch and others, but these are the common ones. Anytime you use get, which means you are getting something from the server. Let's say for YouTube, if you want to watch a video, you make a get request. And then for post, if you want to upload a video to YouTube, this means you are making changes to the data on the server. And for put, if you want to update a content or data that has been uploaded to the server, and then delete is to delete something from a server. And apart from the HTTP method, you also have the URL. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator, which means a resource path being requested. Let's use YouTube here as an example to explore the URL. This is a URL that was requested before we type in youtube.com. That is the path to get some resources. Now, YouTube has specified some paths that we can use to get content from their server. One is by making a search. As soon as you make a search, YouTube is going to take this value and append to the URL over here so that it can be sent to YouTube to retrieve that particular content. So this is what we call the URL. Apart from URL, you also have headers, and that is metadata about the request. This means other information about the response or the request. And we have the body, which is optional data common in post, put, request. So in case you want to make changes to the server, which means we're going to send some data, and this data is what we call the body. The body contains the actual data that's going to make changes on the server. Apart from this, you also have the HTTP response anatomy. Every response contains one status code. The status code here provides additional information about the response or the request. And we have a lot of this status code. For example, 200, 404, and 500. 200 simply means that everything went on well, which is okay. 404 simply means that what you are requesting on the server doesn't exist. And then 500 simply means that internal server error. As you move on, you're going to use most of these status codes. And you also have headers and then the body, as we have already explained. At this point, in case you are confused, it is okay. As you move on by getting into code, you better understand all of these concepts. That's going to help us to build or create our custom servers to build web applications. Now that we have gotten some overview about servers, in this video, we are going to create our first HTTP server in Node.js. That's going to send a simple text to a user when they visit our server. So in here, I'm going to have a folder called servers. And I'm going to have first file as basic.js. So how can we create HTTP server? We're going to use a built-in module called HTTP. So here as const HTTP is equal to require, which is from Node.js. We don't need to install any package. Now we have imported the HTTP module that's going to help us to create our server. So below here, I'm going to have a comment as create a server, and it's going to be as on the HTTP, we have a method called create server, which is a function, and then we're going to pass in a callback function. The callback function here, I'm going to use arrow function for this. You can use the function keyword. In the callback, this is where we have the response request cycle. The first value is the request and the second one is the response. The request here contains the information that's going to be sent to the server. And after server processing, it's going to send back the response back to the user, and we can access that on the response. Likewise, the request on the request. But normally we use rec for request and then res for response. Now, in the callback here, I'm going to log the request details. And I'm going to say console.log backtick received, and then I'm going to inject on the request. We have a method that contains the kind of method the user is using, either get, post, put, or delete. So here I'm going to say that request for, and I'm going to also inject the actual URL the user was requesting. Once again, we will log the request object to know more about these properties. After logging, we are going to set status code and headers. As we made mention that we use status code to provide more information about the response. So in here, we are going to use a method on the response as writeHead, which is this. And then we're going to pass in two things. One is a value of the status code. I'm going to pass in here as 200, which means everything went on well. If you Google or search for HTTP status code here, and then let's visit the official website, and that is the MDN. We have 100 up to 199. That is informational, successful, and we are using the successful responses. If I open that, we have 200, which means okay. 201 means created. 202 means accepted. As you become more experienced in backend development, this status code will come off head. So now, this is my status code, which means everything went on well. The next step is I'm going to pass in what is called an object. And in here, I'm going to specify what is called the content type. The content type here is going to signal the browser the kind of information to send back to the user, either JSON or text or a file. Since this one is going to be a simple text, we're going to use text/plain. And lastly, we are going to send the response by using response.end. And what information are we going to send back to the user is going to be a simple text. I'm going to use single quotes or double quotes. I'm going to say hello world from Node.js server, or hello world, this is my first Node.js server. Alright, so we have created our server here, but we need to add more things into it before it can work. Note that this is a function call we are going to assign to a variable called server. Now we are going to allow our server to listen to this server. So below here, I'm going to say that define, and it goes like this: const port is equal to 5000. This line of code, which is const equal to 5000, simply means that setting up which door your server will receive visitors. When you create a server on your computer, it needs to listen for incoming requests on a specific port number. A port is like a numbered door that different internet services can use. So in this case, we are opening a port which is 5000. It can be any value, either 1000 or let's say 7000, but normally We often use 5000 or 8080, it is up to you. This is our custom port that we are going to open for our server to receive incoming requests. So now we are going to start our server. And how do we start? We're going to use the server that we got from the creation of the server here, which is this. And on that, we have a method called listen, which means our server is going to listen to this port, which is 5000 here as port, and then comma a callback function. And this callback function is going to be fired when our server got connected. So in here, I'm going to log by saying that server running at, then our server is going to run at a local host. So here I'm going to use http://localhost and then colon the port. In this case, that is line number 14. I'm going to inject the port. And let me provide additional information like how to shut down the server. I'm going to use something like code press Ctrl+C to stop the server. Alright, so let's try to reiterate what is going on here. First step is that we imported the HTTP module that's going to help us to create our server. On the HTTP, we have a method called create a server, which is a function call. We pass in only one argument, which is the callback function, and then in the callback function, we have access to the request and then the response. The request contains information about the request, for example, the HTTP method or the URL. And in here, we are sending an information to the user. We are specifying the kind of information that our server is going to send. This is what we call the content type. Then we also have the status code, which provides additional information about the response. And this is where we are sending the response. And in here, we are opening a door that's going to allow our server to receive incoming visitors or the request. And this is where we are starting our server by using server.listen as a function call, pass in the port, and then a callback function. And note that this is going to be listened on a local host. So what is a local host? Local host is like your computer's home address on the internet, but it only points to itself. When you use a term localhost or the IP address 127.0.0, so instead of this, we can use 127.0.0.1, which is also similar to the localhost. In this case, you are telling your computer to connect to itself than reaching out to the website on the internet. Think of it like a regular website, calling a friend's phone, and localhost is calling your own phone from your phone. That is how it works. So now we are going to start our server. Let me right click on the server here, then open in the terminal, and I'm going to run node and then the name of the file as basic. That is basic server, and then enter. As you can see, this is where we can access our server URL. I'm going to copy that and back to my browser. I'm going to provide the path and then hit enter, and we got the information from our server that says that hello world, this is my first Node.js server. So guys, this is how we can set up a basic HTTP server in Node.js to send back some response to the user by saying that hello world, this is my first Node.js server. And once again, this is a basic server. We are going to improve upon server creation as we move on. We are going to improve upon our server creation. We are going to add what is called routing. At the moment, for our basic server, we can only have access to a resource by visiting the home page, and that is /. Let's say that we want to have what is called about us, or /login, or / our services, and all of these paths is going to return different information. For contact, it's going to send back contact information. for services is going to send back services information. This is what we call routing. So let's get back to Visual Studio Code. I'm going to copy this instead and then rename this one to routing or server with routing or server dash routing. We are going to build upon what we have already implemented. So I'm going to close this one and let me run this file instead as server routing. Back here, shut down, clear, and then node server dash routing, and it is listening on this port. Once again, let's see how this one is working. Now our server is ready to receive incoming requests from this port. That is our path. Now when a user visits our path, it is going to execute this function called create server, and all the logics here are going to run. At the moment, we are not seeing any log receive the method on this URL. So here I'm going to reload the page. As soon as I reload, I am making a request to a server. If I reload now, let's check the terminal. The server has responded with this information, and that is received get request from this path, and that is home page, which is the /. And to cancel, use Ctrl+C to stop the server. Now if I visit, for example, /about and hit enter, we still see this content. But if I check in the terminal, I see the HTTP method and then the path. And this path is not returning anything because we haven't specified it or implemented on our server. So this is what we call the routing. So in here, we are going to improve upon this. So let me remove this and let me log the request object to know more about it, because I've made changes unless I reload my server and then send. You see the loading, and now we have information about our request. As you saw, we're using what is called the request method, the URL. So if I access the URL, now if I shut down, clear it, and then try again, as you can see, our server has shut down. Why is it so? I will explain. Let me try to reload again, and let's check the terminal, and this is a path. I can also access the method as we have already demonstrated. Unless I shut down again, reload like that, and then we have the method, which is get method. But why is it that our server keep hanging? And you're gonna see this page is not working, which means that our server is not returning anything back to the user, because in here we don't have a logic to send the response from the server to the user. That is why it keep hanging, and it will keep loading until our server get tired, and then it will shut down. So as soon as I bring something like response.send, or supposed to be response.end, which means sending some response back to the user, I'm gonna say hi. Now with this one, if I shut down and try again and I got hi, at this point our server is returning something back to the user. So let's see how to implement the routing that's going to send back different information based on the path. So in here, I'm going to say that set the content type to plain text, and that is what we are doing, plain text. So in here, it goes like response.setHeaders, and then the headers is going to be the content type, which is equal to text/plain. It's supposed to be comma here. All right, so now we are going to check the URL. If the request.url is equal to /home, and the HTTP method, that is request dot method is also equal to get method. Then we know that the user is making a get request to the home page. The next step is that we are going to set the status code, and we have another format to set. On the response, we have what is called status code. We are going to update this one to use 200, which means we are setting our status code to 200. And then we are going to send the response as res.end. And we're going to say that welcome to the home page. Else if the request.url is equal to /about, and the method supposed to be double ampersand, and the method, that is request.method, is equal to get method. Then I'm going to copy this, paste, change this one to welcome to the about page. Else if the request.url is equal to /contact, and the method is equal to get method, then we're gonna send information that contact us at support@masintech.com. Else, if none of the paths the user is requesting is not on our server, then I'm going to say that res.statuscode is going to be 401, which means not found. I'm going to say that 404 page not found. Alright, so we have implemented our routing. So let's try out, shut down, restart, and if I visit home page, well, I think the server is not running. We have an error that says that headers argument must be an instance of headers. Let me confirm up here. Oh, sorry, it's supposed to be set header, but not headers. Shut down, clear. And if I visit homepage, I have welcome to homepage. If I visit about, I got welcome to about page. If I visit contact, I got the contact page. If I visit, for example, login, for this one, I know that we don't have any path that we are checking on our server. Therefore, this one is going to run as 404. Let me try and hit enter, and we got 404, which means page not found. This is how we implement routing in Node.js. At the moment, we are sending plain text. What about JSON data? Which means that we want our server to send back JSON data than plain text. And that is how basically API needs to send. Always it must be a JSON data. In this video, we are going to implement a server that's going to return JSON data but not plain text. So I'm going to make a copy of this and change this one to server-json. Alright, so let me do some cleanup here. I'm going to remove everything with exception of the setting of the content type. Alright, so let's continue how to send JSON data instead of plain text. So I'm going to remove this, and in here we are going to change the content type to application/JSON, which means our server is going to return JSON data. As we did before, if request.url is equal to homepage and the method, that is rec.method, is equal to get, then we're going to send some JSON data as res.end. And as a function call, the difference here is we're going to use JSON and then .stringify. This simply means that we are going to convert plain object to JSON data when a user requested this resource. So in here, as an object, then key value pair. So message here, then the value is going to be welcome to the API. Else if the user is requesting for /users as rec.url is equal to /users, and then the rec.method is equal to get. Then we are going to have an array of users. The first one with ID equal to 1, and then name as Smith, and then ID of 2, name of say. In production application, you may have these users from database or from a certain API. So in here, I'm going to set the status code as rest.statuscode, which is equal to 200, which means that everything is okay. Well, for the home page, I forgot to set the rest.statuscode, which is equal to 200. All right, and lastly, we need to send the response. I'm going to copy this, or let me start from scratch as rest.end, and then JSON.stringify, and then I'm going to send the users. Great. And we can also have else if the rec.url is equal to /product, and the method rec.method is equal to get. Remove this comma. Then rest.status code is equal to 200. We're going to have an array of product as const product is equal to array of ID of 101, then the name of the product as laptop, and then the price as 1,500. And let me have one more product ID of 102, comma, the name as phone, and then the price of say 900, and rest.end, then JSON.stringify, then pass in the product. All right, so let me run this server, right click, where I'm still in the same folder. So in here, I'm going to run node, the name of the file as server.json, and it is running on this port. So if I visit homepage, now we have a JSON format with key value pair, and we can install an extension to format that. So here I'm going to install an extension, go to Chrome Store, and then search for JSON formatter, and then add the extension. Is going to format our JSON in the browser, where I am in incognito mode. So I'm going to use this, and as you can see, we have well formatted JSON response. If I visit /users, I have my users data. If I visit product, I have my product data. Alright guys, here ends the crash course on Node.js. We are going to have a section to build more mini projects to reinforce our knowledge. In case some of these concepts looks not okay with you, that's okay. Keep practicing, and I'm gonna have a couple of projects once again to reinforce our knowledge. Thanks for watching, and see you in our next project.